bunch of familiar faces in here this morning. Some of you have seen part of this program before. Before I get into the reason you brought me here, you talked about my Veterans Project, and I'm going to just show you a little bit about that. This is something that I started in 2017. I went to a funeral of one of my fellow veterans, and the funeral program had this crappy picture on it. You know, he's holding a drink, there was a light growing out of his shoulder. And, you know, I'm a portrait photographer, I can fix this. So I came to some of the veteran groups that I belong to. The Vietnam Helicopter Pilots Association is one, the Dedalians is another. And I said, you know, I'd like to make a picture of you guys. It's not for your funeral. That's not the point. The point is, when the family needed a good, decent picture of Grandpa, all they had was this crap. So I started trying to get guys in, and getting the first 3 or 4 guys in was like pulling teeth until they saw the pictures. So I just want to go through some of these. Can we kill the lights in here? Is that possible?
Lower down quite a bit. We just want to make sure we can see you too.
You don't need to see me, you need to see that.
That is so good.
So this won an international award, actually. This guy was a P-38 pilot in the Pacific. He passed away a couple years ago, but that patch on his leather jacket, oh, he was so proud. He says, can I bring my leather jacket? It still fits. I said, oh man, yeah. That patch is the Headhunters. That patch is still in use today. That unit still exists. Air Cav guy, B-52 pilot. I'm going to talk briefly about this guy. This is Bob White. Bob White is the last POW released by the Vietnamese. He was alone in the prison camp for 3.5 years. He was flying a Mohawk down in the Delta, got shot down. He was flying a Navy commander to look at the area, and the Navy commander said, can we go lower? Yeah, sure, we can go lower. Bad idea. They got shot down. The Navy commander tried to escape, and they've never heard from him since. They don't know. But Bob spent 3.5 years in the prison camp. And for maybe a future program for you guys, I did a 40-minute video of him telling his story of his time in the prison camp. It's riveting. It's really amazing. Quite a guy. Lives here in Denver. He's a Marine. His dad was a B-17 pilot. This expression on her face, she said, Cliff, I didn't bring my uniform. My uniform's in a trash can in the San Francisco airport. When I got off the airplane, people spit on me, and I threw the uniform away. And after she told me that expression on her face was when I took the picture. World War II. I do this for some people. I'll put the awards in the picture. By the way, I do these pictures for free. There's no charge. But I have decided if anybody wants this treatment, I am going to charge $50 because it takes a long time to gather all the ribbons and do this. But I do the pictures for nothing. Dale passed away a couple years ago. Those are the airplanes that he flew. There's Bill. There's Bill. Mike Silva, some of you may know Mike. Yep. Yep. This guy was 10th Mountain Division, World War II. You know that face? Yeah. No bear. No bear. Yeah. Yeah.
Sir, question, please.
Yes, sir.
The video that you took of that old boy, what was his name?
Bob White.
Okay, so is that video stored somewhere in the archive?
No. I have it, and he does not want it stored anywhere.
He does.
No. Maybe when he passes away, we'll do that. But he said I will do this on the basis that I can give out if people want to see it, I can give out a USB drive for you personally. But he does not want it broadcast anywhere. So that was his choice. You guys know Lyle? He lives up in this area. Okay. This guy's holding his face shield from his Phantom that when he bailed out. He wanted to have that face shield in it. Yeah. This flag, the guy brought the flag. He said, this is the flag of my best friend who committed suicide. I said, yeah, you can put it in the picture. And just as he said that, he looked down, and that's when I took that picture. You can see his bracelet here. On the print, you can actually see the name of his buddy on his bracelet there. There. Much here.
They do look like movie stars.
They do look. This guy, I did this about a month ago, 29th of July, in Loveland. Somebody put this together for me. I did 13 veterans in one day.
Whoa.
4 of whom were World War II. And this was his 100th birthday. Wow. And he took that. He said, "Can you get one of me standing up?" I said, "Damn right, stand up." So he stood up. Yep.
Richard, sorry.
There's another Marine. Yeah. I think that's it. Oh, yeah. Oh, this one. He passed away a couple years ago also. But we got 1 air medal for every 25 hours of combat time. He's got 41 air medals. And an air medal with a V for valor. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, those single mission, like in the Navy Marine Corps,
I'm sorry?
we have stars on the air medals for single mission air medals.
No, the Army doesn't have, no. No. So that's the reason I brought that up is this offer is open to you guys. The only thing is you have to drive to Denver. The Wings Over the Rockies Museum has given me space to shoot these pictures, which is really nice, because I was paying $90 an hour for a studio. And Wings Over the Rockies said, no, we'll give you space to shoot these portraits. And I do most of them at the Centennial Airport. They got a little room, and they don't charge me anything, so it makes it a...
Could we do them here?
Yeah, if you put together several people, this room would be ideal, as long as we can kill these lights. Yeah. I'd be glad to set that up. Okay, so much for that. Let's do the reason you came here. Let's get this. As Mike said, I was an airline pilot. I actually learned to fly in high school. I wanted to fly airplanes since I was about that high. And I was really lucky. There's a little sod strip airport where I grew up, and one day I asked my dad if he'd just take me out and drop me off so I could watch the airplanes. And so he did. I'd watch the airplanes coming, these fabric-covered airplanes. It was great. And to make a long story short, one of the kids that was the line boy there that pumps gas and everything, he was in the high school band, as was I. I was a freshman. He was a senior going away to college. He said, "Would you like this job?" I said, "Oh, hell yeah, I'd like this job." So I worked at that airport through high school and through college, and I bought my own flying lessons. And this was the airplane I started with, an Aeronca Chief, 1946. No electrical system. You had to turn the prop by hand to start it. And I did all my private pilot, all my cross countries were done with a pencil line on a map, dead reckoning with a wet compass, and now these guys got GPS, and I actually had to know how to fly, you know. Before I went in the Army, I'd got my multi-engine rating. This is me standing in front of my first twin engine. This is me in front of my last twin engine. Yeah, I'm at that. Okay, so we start with flight school. We're going to go through flight school, then my forming up a new unit, and then my time in Vietnam. So this was Fort Walters, Texas, in the summer and early fall of '66. I was commissioned officers. The warrant officers was a lot tougher going through flight school than it was for commissioned officers. We'd already been through that crap. For me, I already had 600 hours of flight time, my multi-engine rating, my instructor's rating, most of my instrument rating. Flight school was a picnic. Lived in Fort Worth at this apartment complex. What a deal. This is my wife getting out of the pool. This is what we learned to fly. These things actually do fly. It's a Hiller H-23, and it's a strange machine. You didn't fly the rotor blades. You flew these paddles, and then the paddles connected to the rotor blade. And if you're familiar with gyroscopic precession, you know when you put the input in here, it happens 90 degrees later. But here it was happening 180 degrees later because it was to the paddles, to the rotor. Oh, so there was all the kinds of control lag, and learning to hover these things was a bear. And anybody that's been through helicopter flight school, you know how they do it. The instructor gets you up there and he says, "Okay, I got the controls. you got the rudder pedals and the anti-torque pedals. Just keep it pointed that one direction. He kind of moves it around, and you keep it pointed. You go, hey, this is pretty easy. He said, okay, I got the pedals. He said, you got the collective. That's this over here. That's the pitch. He says, just hold it at a 3-foot hover. He's like that. This is really a piece of cake. He said, okay, I got the collective. You got the cyclic. Just hold us over one spot. Well, that's a little more difficult with that control leg, but you kind of got it. He said, okay, that's good. You got all three. This is no. You were all over the place for about 3 or 4 minutes. All of a sudden, you go, oh, I got it. And then you're good forever. But it's a bear learning to hover these things. This is the cockpit of the Hiller. Pretty basic. Only 3 flight instruments there, a wet compass, an airspeed indicator, and an altimeter. The rest of it's radios and engine instruments, but they worked. Some of my classmates doing a pre-flight. We were the red hats. That's so you know which class you're in. And I always had a camera with me. I mean, I've gotten into photography when I was in college, and I always had a camera. So, yeah, this is proof that they fly. See, right there. There. There I am at, what was I, 22 years old at the time, as my flight instructor. The day I soloed, they throw you in the pool. Of course, there it is, getting out of the pool. And the Army really had a mill of they had hundreds of these H-23 helicopters, and the Army flight training was really outstanding. We were out over central, this is Fort Walter, out over central Texas. I grew up in Ohio and learned to fly in Ohio, and a visibility of 6 or 7 miles was considered okay. I get the text, and I go, oh my God, look how far you can see out here. This is wonderful. I mean, I never saw visibility like this in Ohio. Here's part of Fort Walter. You can see all the helicopters. That's just one of the pads there, all lined up, hundreds of them. There's a better view. Fort Walters now is, all those buildings have been converted. There's a bunch of industries back in there, and Fort Walters is no longer Fort Walters. Whoops. Then we go to Fort Rucker, which has been renamed since then, but it's where we start instrument training.
What's the new name?
I can't remember.
Because my in-laws they've got an outlying field at close to Rucker.
Yeah, I cannot, I should have looked that up before I came here, but yeah, it was named after some famous hero Army pilot, yeah, but I don't remember who I don't know. That's a good question. This is what we learned to fly instruments in. Just another really pretty basic machine, but it worked. And then we finally got to the Huey. This is my hero shot here. Finally got to the Huey, yeah, ooh, yeah. Boy, I thought I was really something, yeah. So this panel is a lot more of an airplane panel than that Hiller was. And we'll talk about this later, but these 4 instruments right here are all tilted. They're tilted different directions. The reason being that when everything is normal, all of these needles point to the 9 o'clock position. So it's really easy for the pilot to look down. Those are 4 really important indications. That's engine oil temperature and pressure, transmission oil temperature and pressure. And so when everything's good, they all point to 9 o'clock, and you'll see further on down the road today, sometimes they don't all point to 9 o'clock. This is Fort Rucker. Learning this was gunnery. I know it's probably hard to see back there, but this was our gun sight here, and we used the Gatling gun, the 6,000 round a minute Gatling gun. They were derated to 4,000 rounds a minute, and further derated to 2,000 rounds a minute per side. You had a question?
20 Mike?
No, 7.62.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just regular old bullets. But you could traverse them with this gun sight. So you could actually shoot the nose off the helicopter. So when somebody got smart and realized, well, wait a minute, when you pivot this far, we should cut out this one doesn't fire anymore. Yeah. And this one picks up the rate of fire that one dropped. So you always had 4,000 rounds a minute, which for you guys that were there, you know it's what it sounds like. Yeah, just every 6 rounds a tracer, but it looks like all tracers. It's a terrible weapon. There's my wife painting my wings on at graduation. This is not because I was terribly smart, but like I said, I went into the flight school with all that. I did graduate first in my class, only because I knew all that stuff. I could have taught some of those classes. So it was kind of a no-brainer. I mean, it was a pretty good deal. There's our graduation. As you can see, I married up. Okay, so after flight school, they sent a bunch of us to Fort Knox, Kentucky to form this unit, the 3rd Squadron, 17th Air Cavalry. The Air Cavalry was relatively new in '67. There was only one unit in Vietnam at that time, and that was the 1st of the 9th, up in with 1st Cav. But they was having great success, so the Army just said, we need more units like that. And this is the basic breakdown of this is the headquarters troop. You know, you have the headquarters and they got all their support elements, but these were the troops. So you had, the CO had 2 helicopters here. Scouts, we had 10 OH-6s, the little Hughes helicopter, which is called the Light Observation Helicopter, LOH, which is immediately named the Loach. That name stuck. We had 10 UH-1C helicopters, and that's what I flew, was the gunships. And then you had 5 slick helicopters, the UH-1H. The way this worked in theory is the scouts and the weapons platoon would go out and try to find the enemy. And these guys, like Bill, would try to draw fire because the Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, any guerrilla war, they want to fight on their terms. They're not stupid. So they're not going to take a small group of people to attack a large group of GIs. So we had to go find them. There was an American officer or some brigade commander say, one of these sons of bitches to come out and fight like a man. Well, that's because they're smart. They're not going to come out and fight except when they want to. So we had to go find them. So the scouts would try to find them. The weapons supported the scouts, and if it was deemed necessary, then the slicks, we had a platoon of infantry. And we would insert the infantry in to help to go find these people. Not so much to engage them, but to find them. And then, as I'll talk about in a minute, my job was I was working with the infantry to explain where we found these people and what they might want to do about that. So we got to Fort Knox, and everything was brand spanking new. I mean, you know how a new car smells? New airplane smells just as good. Brand new stuff, everything, not a scratch on it. This is the UH-1C. So here you have that minigun right here, and this one is equipped with the 7 rocket tubes. And we terrorized northern Kentucky for a few months. There's the Huey engine there. This was one of my big disappointments in the Army. In May of '67, and I know you can't read this, but this is off the internet. This accident is listed in a bunch of Army accidents. The post commander of Fort Knox wanted to have a firepower demonstration for West Point cadets. And a firepower demonstration, it's a big deal. You know, you have armor, and how that he had these I can put the helicopter with the armor, this is going to be great. Well, at the dress rehearsal, the day before the West Point cadets were there, they had it open for the families, everybody to come out and watch this. And we're in the stand, I'm in the stands, I had binoculars. And I'm watching it, and these 2 Hueys come over a little rise, and I'm thinking, man, they're pretty close. And I see something flutter down between the 2 of them. And one of them rolls over like this, one of them flares up like this, and they crashed. Well, the rotor blades meshed. And everybody on this one died. And the brother of one of the pilots was in that. So they lost the pilot and the brother all in the same helicopter.
Oh, God.
So we get back to the post, and I go to my operations officer. I said, why were they flying? Anybody who flies airplanes or helicopters, and you're not the Blue Angels, you don't fly side by side. You have to have a leader and someone who flies off. You have to fly on a helicopter. You definitely don't want to do that. Well, this general, this post commander, he demanded that they fly side by side. And I said, well, why didn't you tell him that that's not safe? Well, we did, but he insisted anyway. And of course, that general then, the next day, we had to have a safety stand down because we're not safe. Because he insisted that he would not listen to us. Now, it's easy for me to say now, I know. If that had been me, I'd have said, screw that. We're flying this way. What are they going to do, send me to Vietnam?
Cut your hair off.
Yeah,
First.
right.
Which they will anyway.
Which they will anyway. All right, so you're safe. Just do the safe thing. So that really,
Was he ever relieved? Was he relieved or anything?
no, he wasn't relieved. He blamed it on us.
Pilot error.
Pilot error, right. Well, in a way, you know, that's the other thing. These two pilots, they were right out of flight school. These were young kids, 18, 19 years old. They're going to do what they're told. I was like 24, and you'd have told me to do that. I said, oh, really? You think I'm going to do that? But they would do it. So anyway, we trained at several places around the East Coast. This was in Virginia. Clyde here thought he could play the guitar. Actually, the sergeant really could play the guitar. There's yours truly. God dang, I was young. Look at that. That's about 3 seconds worth of ammunition there. It's, yeah, put that in. So we flew, this is in Virginia, in West Virginia. By the time we got to Vietnam, we were really a good team. We'd flown together now, all of us, for 3 or 4 months in training. The training that they put us through was really quite good. You see a bunch of the Hueys down here. There we are. That's the same. That's all of us lined up down there. So at the end of our training, this was the best 4 days I ever spent in the Army. They gave us a credit card and said, you got to get these helicopters to Stockton in 4 days. Have fun. So here we are with a credit card, $500,000 at that time, Huey, and all we had to do was be in Stockton in 4 days. We were everywhere from 10 feet to 10,000 feet, chasing jackrabbits across the desert. It was a hoot. We had a ball. This is at, I had to look at the name on the fuel truck here, but that's the El Paso airport. We were flying across the desert down, we're down relatively low. I'd never seen this country before. Man, this is really cool, getting to see the U.S. at 500 feet. It's just, Carlsbad, yep. This was, we stopped at various Air Force and military installations. I don't know where this one is. Another Air Force base here, stopped there for gas. There's a, how many of you know what that is?
F-84.
F-84 which?
Yeah, man.
F, yeah, with the swept wing. What's that?
F-101.
F-101, you betcha, yeah, yeah. Fort Bliss, Phoenix, that's the Phoenix Airport, Palm Springs. So, we got our helicopters out there to Stockton, and we had a couple weeks then before, a couple weeks leave, a week or so leave. And then in October, late October, early October '67, we flew out to Oakland to get on the ship to go to Vietnam. This was just a picture of it's funny, I hadn't seen these pictures when I put this together for 30 years. I can remember all their names just like that. Oh yeah, I even know the back of their head. I know who they are. It's amazing. So here we are getting on the ship, coming up the gangplank.
That's the ship you went across the Pacific on?
Yeah, this is it. Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah, it's tight quarters. Yeah.
Army knows how to travel.
Yeah, Army knows how to travel, right? Yeah, we traveled in style. So underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah, man, oh brother.
Were protesters at that time?
No protesters. So looking at the good thing about going over on a ship is that we were the last unit off, so it took like 29 days, the total. That all counts against your tour. So that's 29 days of getting a nice tan, reading a book, not getting shot at. So that part's a good deal. So we get to Vietnam. And this is the road into Zion, where we started out. And this is the I am not in Kansas anymore moment. Okay. Seeing this and this, like that. Wow. Talk about culture shock. I will say that the Vietnamese girls in the Ao Dai is pretty appealing. That's their traditional dress, very tight to the waist, and then that tight slacks, and it's a gorgeous dress. It is really cool. So anyway, we get there, and the first thing they do is they send us out. Now remember, we all came in as a unit, so we all got sent out to various active units for our in-country orientation. And I got sent to Dao Tiang, which is, 40, 50 miles north of Saigon. And it's a Michelin rubber plantation. Still is, as far as I know. And of course, anybody that's been there, you get the Filipino girl band, some other band. But my second night in Vietnam, I'm up here, and the young warrant officer that was working with me said, just so happens tonight's our night on mortar watch. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we haven't been mortared in months, but every night we get the helicopters ready in case they were mortared that we can launch right away and try to at least save the helicopters, get them out of there. But it shouldn't be any big deal. Which, if this were a movie, there'd be ominous music playing right now. Right? So what we did is we would go out to the Hueys, and you go through the whole pre-start checklist, right down to where you pull the trigger to start it, and then you stop, turn the battery switch off. So if you have to get out, all you have to do is go out there, run there, battery switch on, pull the trigger, and start it. Okay, that's what we did. So sure enough, siren goes off. Damn, there's a siren. This is my second night in Vietnam, and I run out of this. It was really nice. It was this French villa. Like I said, it was a rubber plantation, a beautiful old French villa. Ran out, and as I'm running out, from about me to Bud back there, a mortar round lands. Maybe a little close. Actually, it seemed like it was about 3 feet away, but it wasn't. And I'm thinking, holy shit, I'm glad I'm not faster. It sprayed. I feel all this stuff hit me. And I didn't stop. I thought, well, I'm still alive. I jumped in the helicopter, and while I'm in there, I realized it's just mud. It was just dirt and mud that hit me. And of course, we took off, and they were gone. I mean, But that was my welcome to Vietnam Yankee dog. That was it. So we moved up from Saigon to Tay Ninh, the big mountain up there. And it didn't take long, so we started building an officers' club. Now, the commanding officer, well, we'll talk about him in a minute. He was just a great guy. In fact, he became a general later on. He said, where did you guys get the building material? Don't tell me. A bunch of warrant officers on their second tour, they knew. So all of a sudden, all this stuff just showed up one day. God knows where it came from, but we built our own officers club. It was pretty good, actually. Tay Ninh was a busy place. A lot of Army, a lot of Air Force. C-123s here, Caribous. The Army used to fly these, and while I was in infantry officer basic course, that's when the Army was transferring these to the Air Force. So all day long, you see the Caribous flying over, guys doing the transitions. This is the gas station. This happens to be Cu Chi, actually. No credit card needed. Just land, pull up to a pump, and take what you need. This was the base at Zion. Okay. This is our flight line. Here. This is our troop commander here, Gary Luck, right here. Gary became he stayed in, he became a general, and during the first, I forget the names of these the first time that Saddam invaded Kuwait, remember that one? And he was the general that took the troop up around north and cut everybody off. I see that in the news, General Gary Luck. I said, damn, it was my old CO. I was his pilot for a while. Quite a guy. He probably heard this from somebody else. But when he took over the troop, He said, okay, men, he said, I know that sometimes that BS comes down from headquarters, and that crap just keeps coming. All I want you to know is I'm going to try and catch it. But sometimes that stuff comes so fast it spills over and it's going to hit you. And I'm sorry. Well, after that we thought, this is our guy. You know? And he did. He was an officer's officer. He was quite a man. Another view of him there. We kept the Hueys through March, and this is at Tay Ninh. But shortly after we got back from that in-country orientation, I get back and they say, we're taking you out of the gun platoon. I said, why? He says, the CO wants you to be his pilot. I don't want to be his pilot. You don't have a choice. Okay, this is before Gary Luck, by the way. You're going to be Major Clark's pilot. Okay. So what happens? 2 days later, Major Clark gets transferred out. But I was still going to be Gary Luck's pilot. But as it turns out, they couldn't put me back in the gun platoon because they already gave it to somebody else. But you can't take that guy out now. Because being in the guns was kind of, that's where everybody wanted to be. And I was a commissioned officer, not a warrant, so it had to be an officer's spot. Well, it turns out we start working with the infantry, and the infantry does not know how to use us. So Major Luck says, I'd like you to be a liaison officer to the infantry. I had to go out and live in the field with the infantry. So there I am, steely-eyed warrior. But I lived like that for a couple of weeks at a time, and then they'd fly me back for laundry and get my mail and that type of stuff. But it was really very interesting. The scouts would go out and find the VC and the guns like we talked about before, and my job was to go back and say, here's what we found, and here's the map, and here's where these people are, and these division operation officers would say, well, you guys can't know that. Yeah, yes, we can. Bill found them. Here's they are. Well, yeah, but you can't see them. No, they found them. So that's where we got, hey, Major, how about a ride? So we would put this brigade S3 in the seat of the LOH with Bill and scared that crap out of them. Because they would park this and they would say, yes, you guys really do find them. So after that, they started believing us when we tell you this is where they are. And of course, the scout pilots had a really fun time scaring these people, too. So here I am. What was I, 23 years old, 24 years old? Damn. Look at that. Jesus. I had hair. Oh, the only reason I put this in here is, we had this very expensive sight in the Huey for the rockets. But it was a pain. So I don't know anybody that actually used that. What we would do is we would swing that down here, and there's a reticle on it, and we would get that grease pencil out of our pocket, and we put an X on the windshield in front of it, get that damn sight out of the way, and that was our gun sight, The rockets that we fired weren't all that accurate. They were kind of an area fire, so it's kind of like, where are the rockets going to land? Out there somewhere, yeah. Out on the ground, yeah, out there. Little Huey maintenance there. Now here's a good picture of that minigun and the rocket tubes. There were several different configurations of the Hueys that we had. This was our most common in our unit, but some of them, they didn't use the minigun at all. They put the 48 rocket, 24 on the side. All they were was, we call them the hog. Others would have a configuration like this, but they put a grenade launcher on the front, looked like a toilet seat actually in the front, with a 75 millimeter grenades, which was great for working a tree line or a ditch line. You just put those grenades out and plop them out there. Here's yours truly right now. My wife wrote me a letter every single day. I got a letter. Well, I didn't get them all. Sometimes they come in 3 or 4 at a time. But she wrote every single day. I am still married to that woman, by the way. There's the LOH. Obviously, it had some damage in there somewhere. Here's Major Luck again, tracing a bullet came through that guy's LOH, and he was going, holy crap, that just missed his head. It did. This is our truth. Here I am, like a spider looking at a wristwatch. I mean, that's strange. Yep. Here's where I lived. Now, looking at this now, I'm thinking, here we have unexploded ordnance. And we're throwing that around like it's a toy. Were we stupid or what? The sad story here is Sandy Jones. He was my best friend. He got through Vietnam and he got killed in a mid-air collision in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He was flying a traffic helicopter. I'm in Chicago. I'd been hired by United, and we corresponded with him and his wife. And I'll never forget it. My wife opens this letter. Oh, I got a letter from Bev. And she's quiet. She says, oh, God. She says, Sandy's dead. Broke my heart. But anyway, I lived out. This is where I lived for stretches at a time, like this. Oh yeah, I put this in here. Here's that OH-23 like we flew for training. This is not quite as good a medevac as the Huey gave him, but sometimes that's all they had. Like MASH, yeah, very much like MASH. That's right. Yeah, dry season. That dust is from one helicopter. Yeah. I lived out there. Up there. This is Nui Ba Din, that big mountain up there by Tay Ninh. This is the top of that mountain. You can see around here, these are all the reinforcements around it, all these huts. Everything from here down belonged to the VC. Everything back up here was us. And the arrow here, there's a resupply Huey down there, and the reason we were in the gunship, we were just flying around to protect him. He's on the ground down there.
What's that big square?
This right here, I have no idea.
Okay.
It's a big army square dirt there. It's I don't know. Maybe that's a dump.
As combat engineers, we often were called up there to try and read
Oh, were you?
things.
Yeah.
Mike, do you know what that square ditch is?
No, to be truthful, I don't recall ever seeing it. You're probably right.
The swimming pool.
It's like,
Yeah, that's the pool. Yeah. Yeah. This is the officers' club, and that's the pool. We've got, that young man is leaving, and the reason he's, here's General Westmoreland.
Did you take that picture?
This picture? Yeah, I took that picture.
Took that picture?
Yes. Why are you shocked that I took that picture?
Picture.
Wow.
Looks just like him.
This is the guy that during the Tet Offensive in '68, when the Marines in a way told them they were under attack, refused to believe them.
That's right.
And said, no, that's all going on up at where a caisson. No, it's in a way. No, it can't be a way. The man was incompetent. That little kid left there. I put these in just as a reminder that this is what we do. Often we talk about, the flying and the fun. We kill people. And these people had families and wives and children, just like we did. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. Here I am again. I had no part in capturing that weapon, but of course I'm showing that I have it. Now, I come back from a mission, and the company clerk comes out to me and he said, I think I was a captain at that time. He said, Captain Lawson, you have to go see the first sergeant. I said, why? He said, well, you signed the wrong contract with the Army. You signed 3 years total service. It was supposed to be 3 years after flight school. Now, I had just watched how this war was being fought. And I thought, okay, see, if I do that, I'm going to go back to the States, and they're going to send me back here. I said, well, you tell the first sergeant that Captain Lawson has his part of the deal, the Army has this deal, and we're sticking I'm sticking with the contract. He said, you're not going to go see him? I said, no, I'm not going to go see him. He said, is that kid guy? He said, fucking A, sir, good for you. Turns out there were hundreds of us that were commissioned about the same time that the Pentagon sent out the wrong paperwork. Because I get back to my tent and I said, hey, I told this guy, he said, no, same thing, he just came and saw me a little while ago. Turns out it was almost every commissioned officer there had gotten that same letter, the wrong. None of us signed up. So here's a little, it's a little sequence of the guys getting ready for their scout and gunship mission, and getting briefed here. The thing, I didn't even see this when I took the picture, but up here it says, bunkers damaged, hooches destroyed, hooches damaged. Now, blowing up some mud hut, they had to keep track of that. Because as you all know, what was the metric in Vietnam for success? Body count. The dumbest metric ever. Meaningless. So that was McNamara, though. We had no way.
And Westing.
Pardon?
And Westing.
Well, yeah, but that came down from, yeah, right. So it's all about body count. Well, if body count counted, Russia would have lost the war.
Right.
Russia lost way more than we did, or the Germans did. So, and I heard this more than one time. One example was, gunships are out there, and the pilot calls in and he said, we caught some running for a tree line, and we put some fire on them. And the S3, the operations officer, said, well, how many did you kill? The response was, I don't think we got anybody. He said, well, you must have gotten some. He said, no, well, we'll give you 5.
Making stuff up.
He said, no, I don't think we got anybody. We'll give you 5. I'll guarantee you, by the time that got to the Pentagon, it was 12. Everybody would add a couple. It was awful. But that was McNamara. For McNamara, this was a war of attrition. We are going to kill more of them than they kill of us, therefore we will win. Well, he was wrong. So blowing up a hooch was not going to win the war. Yeah. So here's I'm going to tell you a bit more about Billy and Joe here in a minute. But here, August of '68, they're getting ready to go. Billy's checking his sidearm, getting ready to go out there, buckling the front seat of the Cobra. Joe's in the back, ready to go. And off they go. Here's the scout that's going with him. And there they go.
Did you do the Cobra?
No, good question.
Bizarre.
By the time we got the Cobras, I was short enough that unless somebody had gotten killed, there was no slot. And I did not want my friends to die, so I got the seat. So I was still doing my live with the infantry thing, which was very interesting, by the way. I would rather have flown, but watching how the war was prosecuted was a real eye-opener. They had no idea what they were doing. None. There was no strategy except kill people. That was it. There was no objective. Kill people. That was it. So I'm in, I meant to mention this earlier, I'm in the operations room with this other, I was a first lieutenant at the time, another first lieutenant, and he's drawing lines on the map. I said, so what are you doing? He said, well, we're looking at tomorrow's insertion. I said, okay. Well, why are you, what's there? I don't know. Well, why did you choose that? Well, they got to be somewhere. Okay. That was it. They got to be somewhere. So we would put infantry in there, and if we were lucky, we'd pull them out in the evening, nobody got hurt. But that usually wasn't the case. We'd put infantry in there, a couple would get killed, a couple would get wounded, and would go pull them out. For what?
You mentioned earlier you had just a platoon. Is that it?
Well, for us.
Okay.
But our job was to find them, and then my job was to go back to the brigade or whatever and say, here's what we found, and they would make a decision if they wanted to make.
How many did you find?
Well, we would find hundreds. You know? Yeah. Yeah.
A division.
But if it was a large group, no, that we would leave and tell that was my job then to go back to the brigade or whatever and say, here's what we found and here's where they are.
Yeah.
And it was up to them, did they want to call an air mobile company to do an air mobile assault or not, or whatever they wanted to do. But I found that very discouraging, that we didn't do anything except just go kill people and get some of our.
No picture, no plan.
No picture, no strategy. It was all tactics, and the tactics was go kill people. The reason I put that in there is I find this very amusing. This little placard here says, warning, rotating the gun by hand, the gun will fire. Because it's electrically turned, but it's mechanical that fires the gun. So all you can see, oh, what does this do? And turn it, yes, and it will fire.
Somebody will turn.
Somebody will turn. I'm sorry, sir, what?
We had a crew chief on the Tamarack at Lock A that fell and tripped and cut him in half.
Yeah. And this is the grenade launcher. We call it the chunker. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a chunk. Pardon?
40 millimeters.
Yeah, 40 millimeter, right. Exactly. So this guy was hooked up with both the one minigun, one rocket, or one chunker, the grenade launcher, and rockets. Yeah. Scout. Yeah. I don't think he was going out on a mission because the rocket tubes are empty, but maybe, but probably not. It's just a pretty picture of a Cobra. I love this picture. Look at the cigarette in the guy's mouth up here. Yeah. Well smoked, you know. Yeah. So, shortly after this would have been the summer. We had moved from Tainan down to Zion, and in the summer of '68, the Viet Cong were rocketing Saigon almost every night. Now these rockets weren't very accurate. They were just, you'd fire them and they would just land. But being rockets, you could see the fire trail as they were launched. So the general that was in charge of capital security or capital control, whatever they called it, he said, we'll get some helicopters up there so you guys can fly around the city at night, and if you see the rocket trail, you can roll in and take them out. Fair enough. So it was our B troop they just flew at night. That's all they did. Well, after a while, this general realized he was an ex-artillery colonel. Now he's a general. He did not like aviation assets getting all the credit. He said, okay, no more. I just want you to adjust artillery. So you guys all know, how long does it take? You call a fire mission over, or fire mission wait. By the time they do that, they've packed up and they're in Cambodia by now. So this went on for a couple nights. They would adjust artillery, and the guy said, this is stupid. So what they would do is they would go back to, when they saw the rocket launch, they would roll in and try to take it out. Then they would climb back up and call in artillery into nothing, just out into rice paddies. That's the Army, folks. That's the way we fought the war. Here's the big lift. This was you talk about, we have these 5 slicks in the infantry. Here's the case of they're bringing back some POWs, bunch of young fellows who probably said, great, my war is over. Bringing them back, and we had the intelligence folks to interrogate them. One of my jobs towards me coming home was the commanding officer of the squadron was a new guy, and he was a glory hog. That's a military term. he knew Charlie Black. Charlie Black was a correspondent for the Columbus, Georgia newspaper. And he invited Charlie to Vietnam to write stories about his unit. Well, Charlie was a really interesting guy. But they said, we'd like you, since you're leaving pretty soon anyway, we'd like you to be the guy that accompanies Charlie around and makes connections so he can do his job. Oh, great. Okay, so here's Charlie in the, look at this, the camouflage uniform, the camouflage beret. What a guy. So we were going out somewhere, and we had Major Luck with us. Again, here's Gary Luck again. Here's Charlie. And we're in this helicopter. And remember I told you about the importance of these 4 instruments here looking, they should all be at 9 o'clock. Well, if we look at that one, it no longer is. And that's the transmission oil pressure. The transmission on a helicopter is a big deal. So pilot put this thing on the ground out in the middle of nowhere, and Major Luck grabs the machine. Who does he think he is? I mean, there's going to be a Rambo out there with the... So we set a perimeter around the helicopter. I think we were on the ground for 6 or 7 minutes before somebody picked us up. And here's the commanding officer getting back in the helicopter. And then I did an escort. This was a Japanese news crew. I kind of made the connections for them to move them around. But the kid, you look at these pictures, don't you wonder where she is now? What an adorable little girl. I mean, she's just as cute as can be. Talk about victims of the war, you know. He's carrying a hacksaw. He's got a hacksaw. They're probably, trying to chop up some metal for something. Who knows? It breaks your heart. So we had FACs, the forward air controllers that worked with us. In fact, Brad Page, he went over. He formed the unit with us at Fort Knox, and he went over with us to Vietnam. Spent that year with us. So these 2 Air Force pilots worked with us. This is Brad walking out to the airplane. As a photographer, I love this picture. I mean, there's a story there. Walking out there. Getting his bird dog ready. Yeah. And off he goes. Yes, war is hell. That's where I lived my last couple of months. And this was at Zion. That was you could tell I had rank. I got a corner unit. Okay. So this is doing the 1-to-1 ain't no fun. Okay, so I'm coming back from a mission in the Huey Charlie model. I go to put the pitch down to descend, and this is back when we were still up at Tay Ninh. Put the pitch down, and I'm starting to get this vibration. Pretty severe. Put it down on the mortar. It's even worse. This is not right. So I pull the pitch back up, it goes away. Put it down again, starting to get this little 1-to-1 vibration. And something's not right here. So I put it down and I have to get down. I can't leave the pitch here because I have to get down. Yes, I have to, yeah. So I put it down just enough that we could start a very gradual descent, but before we got the vibration. We didn't know what the problem was. So I just flew a very long and did a fixed wing type approach into Tay Ninh. A very shallow approach. Didn't even flare at the bow. I just did a run onto the runway. We get out of the helicopter and look out. The co-pilot and I are looking up at the road ahead, thinking something's up there. And the crew chief or the gunner, I don't know which, he's farther out. He said, "Jesus Christ, look at this." The rotor blade had split.
Oh my God. 3
feet from the tip.
Oh.
And this picture shows this actually went up almost this far. So what was happening was when I was putting the pitch down, that thing was out there kind of flopping like this.
If that had come off.
If that had come off, the helicopter would have destroyed itself in 1/10 of a second.
It would have what?
about a tenth of a second for the helicopter to destroy itself. Because it happened to a crew the week before this. The maintenance officer saw me a day or two later. He said, Captain Lawson, he said, you have no idea how lucky you are. He said, we found out a couple days before yours that exactly the same thing happened to another crew, and of course the helicopter came apart. Turns out there was a whole batch of blades that had this flaw. But of course everything is batched. They have serial numbers, so they found them, and I don't know that they took them out of service, but yeah, the blade was cracked. Yeah. So here's, I'm wrapping this up now. Just a bunch of guys I want to talk about a little bit about. See this St. Christopher's medal here? Well, Billy was playing his music kind of loud. And the same guy that we saw in those pictures before here, that's Joe Koch. Joe Koch told Billy to turn down his music. Billy didn't want to turn down his music, so Joe went and got his .38. This is a no shit story. Went and got his .38, came back in, and he shot Billy. His St. Christopher medal stopped the bullet. I mean, it still hurt him. I mean, you know, but he didn't die. And that was like the week after I came home, and a friend, or maybe a little longer, a friend of mine who had still been in Vietnam at the time called me up and said, you aren't going to believe the story about Billy and Joe. And he told me that story. The fellow that was the platoon leader of the weapons platoon at that time, a couple years later, wrote a book called Maverick, and his name was Marvixen. That story is in the book. Of course, he changed their names. Billy Hiltner was Billy Hilton. But he told that story in the book about Joe coming back and shooting him. Yeah. I do not know what happened to Joe. I don't know.
Shot with a 38 or?
The 38, yeah.
45.
Damn good thing he didn't have a 45. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So this is just a bunch of pictures of a bunch of young guys. Oh, I will talk about this one. I'm at the library in Parker, where I live, and I had my Huey hat on. And the guy next to me says, oh, you flew the Huey? I said, yeah, I did. He said, when were you in Vietnam? I said, 67, 68. He said, really? I said, yeah. He said, me too. He said, what unit were you in? I said, the 3rd of the 17th Cav. He goes, me too. What troop? I said, Charlie troop. He said, yeah, me too. So there we are, 50 years later, meeting in the library in Parker. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's him. Yeah, that's him. Yeah. Just a bunch of young kids, you know. Me. Yes, yeah. This guy became a United pilot also, like that. Bob Caloris. Here's another picture. I just love this picture. Clyde Shy with the smoke. Oh man, that Billy again. Sandy again. So just before I left, these guys knew I was the photographer. They knew I was going home. They said, would you take a picture of us all with our Cobra? Yeah, of course. So we got them all together, got everybody out on the flight line, and I took these two pictures. And when I got back to the States, I had them all printed up, and I sent prints back to all the guys back there. So I hope they still have this picture. So know your enemy, Patton, Rommel, and Mao Zedong. Okay. So, no, what?
Too true to be good. Oh, man.
So when Patton had defeated Rommel on the battlefield, he made the statement, I read your book, you son of a bitch. He knew what Rommel was going to do because he read Rommel's book. Any good officer, you got to know your enemy. Would we all agree with that? Of course. All right. So before I went to Vietnam, I had read Mao Zedong's book on protracted war. He spelled out exactly what the Viet Cong were going to do. I went to Vietnam having read this book thinking, how are we going to handle this? Because he talked about how you don't fight until you have the advantage. He talked about when it gets too bad, you just draw back into the countryside. Let them. If it gets really bad, you draw back until they decide they won and they go home. And I mentioned this to my CO, to Gary Luck. I said, you know, I told him, we can't win this. He says, what do you mean? I said, I read Mao's book. I told him, he said, you really shouldn't read that stuff. Well, you tell me I shouldn't read that stuff. I'm reading that stuff. That book is still in print. You can get that today. I was going to get it, but for $38, I decided I didn't want it anymore. But he does describe exactly what the Viet Cong, what the whole guerrilla warfare was. And that's the way they fought. So,
Bernard Fall's book, Street Without Joy, was the one we were all told to read.
yes, and in fact,
Story.
I was going to bring that today to show you. I am rereading it right now. That is about the French. Yep. And another book, I have been told you will never understand the American involvement in Vietnam until you read this book, Fire in the Lake. It is amazing. We did not understand their culture. We didn't care about their culture. We are Americans. We're the white boys. These are little brown people. They can't beat us. We have F-100s and F-4s and 175 millimeters.
And we've never lost a war.
And we've never lost a war. This is going to be a piece of cake. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the time, Wheeler, I think it was. No, it wasn't him. It doesn't matter. He said, this Vietnam thing is good. It'll be a laboratory of how we fight the guerrillas. It's a laboratory. Yeah. This is not an easy read, but it's a really excellent read about their religion, about their ancestor worship. You know, in the Diem regime, and we backed it up, we had these strategic hamlets. We would pull the people up, put them in these strategic hamlets to keep the VC away from them. It was a recruiting ground for the VC. Now these people are all in one spot. And we took them away from their land. And the land is a big deal to the Vietnamese. All they wanted to do was be left alone and grow their rice. We did everything wrong.
We did the same in the Philippines.
Yes.
So the Philippines,
So I will understand if people disagree with me on that. Reasonable people can disagree, but in my opinion, we should never have been there. It was an immoral war. We lost 58,000 people for nothing. The Vietnamese now, and this lady, she wrote this in '72. She went back to Vietnam in the mid-'90s. And she talked about...
I've heard that before.
So, just a couple notes here. Coulda won, shoulda won. When I was hired by United, most of the captains there were World War II and Korea era pilots. And they found out that I'd been in Vietnam. Said, yeah, we should have won that. We could have bombed them. I said, no, you couldn't. They didn't have the industry of a Germany or a Japan. The supplies came from Russia and China down there. They had a steel mill, and they had some light industry, but they did not have an infrastructure to bomb. And killing civilians doesn't work. The British didn't give in when the Nazis bombed them, did they? The Germans didn't give in when we bombed the civilians. The Japanese didn't give up. The Ukrainians are not giving up. Bombing civilians does not work. It just makes them tougher. And we haven't learned that yet. Yeah, more bombs dropped on Vietnam than Germany and Japan combined. That's a fact. I mentioned the fatality of strategic hamlet. Oh, Nixon's secret plan. Nixon should have been tried for treason. During the '68 election year, Nixon got their peace talks were going on at the time. Nixon got word to the South Vietnamese to not sign it because if they wait, he will get them a better deal. So the peace talks fell apart. That's treason. Tricky Dicky. Yep. Saigon, the Saigon government at that time was very corrupt. I mean, they were taking U.S. money, and God knows where that money was going. The black market, it was awful. The Vietnamese in the cities were addicted to the U.S. dollars. You know, all that money coming in. The peasants, for the most part, were at least neutral and sometimes very supportive of the VC. They were. They were not big fans. And this came out of this book, and it's the truth. We left them with a service economy to service the U.S. military. civil servants, bars, restaurants, and prostitutes.
Just like the Philippines.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Now, she goes back in the 90s, and the good news is, as we know now, Vietnam is a trading partner. They've come around. The communists, they didn't figure this out. When the communists came in and made them, all the farmers into the commune, the collective, they almost had a famine by the mid-'80s. Why? Because the farmers, they got nothing out of this. So the communists finally said, holy crap, this doesn't work. So they took away the collective. They allowed people to profit, and production soared, and people could eat. And as we see now, Vietnam's a relatively decent economy now.
It's booming, yeah.
So we just got in the way of about 50, we just set them back about 50 years for nothing. Okay. This was my retirement office. And I miss it every day. Right, bud? Yeah, I miss it every day. That was the 777. Just what a wonderful piece of equipment. And this is the comparison between my my retirement cockpit and my basic training cockpit here. It's a little bit of a change. So that's all I have. I will entertain any questions, comments, insults, whatever you have.
Comment. You were talking about body counts. My brother-in-law was a Marine platoon leader. After a B-52 raid, they sent him in to count body parts to find out how many people were killed.
Yeah. Yeah. Count the arms and legs and divide by 4, huh? Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of the B-52 raids, thank you. and our scouts had determined, they had found a big concentration of arms and munitions in little hospitals, and so they decided, the higher-ups said, well, this is a great place to call in a B-52 strike. So they did that. They put it all together, and a day or two later, we had a B-52 strike in this area. They missed. And we thought, wait a minute, we gave you the coordinates. Somebody back in, where was the B-52 base? Guam, or where was it? Guam. Okay. Somebody back there, some intelligent lieutenant decided that doesn't look right, and he moved the coordinates. Oh, one more thing about the Air Force, then I'll leave you, I'll let you go. An Air Force officer in the Pentagon is quoted as having said, the Air Force would rather, let me get this right, the Air Force would rather lose the war with bombing than win it without bombing. Because if you win this war without bombing, it flies in the face of Air Force doctrine. Jesus Christ. And that's a quote. That's all I have.
That's great.
Thank you.
Cliff, thank you so much for joining us. And
Oh, thank you.
Challenge.
Thank you very much.
We would like to work with you